We are looking at the last question for free response 3, question 3. And in this question, we are being told that a U.S. firm is selling $10 million worth of goods to a firm in Argentina, where the currency is the peso. How will the transaction, right here, I'm reading right here, above, how will this transaction affect Argentina's aggregate demand? Now, what we want to understand, first of all, is when we talk about aggregate demand, we're really talking about Y, or real GDP. Because if we go back to our original graph here, we can see that as aggregate demand shifts, right, in the long run, is aggregate demand, not in the long run, sorry, short run, as aggregate demand shifts, that's going to change Y, right? As it shifts right, real output or real GDP goes up, and then as it shifts left, real GDP goes down. So we can think of Y in this case and aggregate demand as being one and the same. So we can just put this right here. Okay. Now, so the question is, and why that's important is that these are all components of a GDP, but we can also think about all of these consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports as components of aggregate demand as well. Okay. So we want to say that when we get this, when this transaction happens, we're going to see a fall in the net exports for Argentina. So Argentina's domestic economy is going to look like this, right? Because if you think about it from the standpoint of the consumers, they're not going to consume more or less. Theoretically, they're just going to consume U.S. goods more instead of consuming goods that are produced in Argentina. So these three, in this case, we're going to assume that they don't change, but we know that net exports is going to drop because from the perspective of Argentina, their imports go up there by 10 million. So net exports, if you remember, is exports, I'll just write it out, exports minus imports. That is what net exports are, okay, equals NX, okay, so let me just make this where it's not quite so huge. So when we, from the perspective of Argentina, when their imports go up, their net exports, this whole expression is going to go down, right? Which is going to cause their aggregate demand to shift to the left, okay, and go down, and which is the same thing, okay, going down, decreasing, okay. So that takes care of the first part, okay, A. Now, B, assume that the U.S. current account balance with Argentina is initially zero. How will this transaction above affect the U.S. current account balance? Well, if the U.S. is selling $10 million worth of goods, that means $10 million are going into the accounts of the U.S. So if they started at a zero and then this transaction happened, the U.S. is going to have a surplus in their account balance. They're going to be in the positive, a surplus, okay? And it's going, and because this money is going to be recorded as a credit in the current account of the U.S. All right, so that's B. C, we want to draw, I've already showed you, but we want to draw a correctly labeled graph of the foreign exchange market for the U.S. dollar. And we want to show how a decrease in U.S. financial investment in a foreign country, in the foreign exchange market, and in this case Argentina, affects each of the following: the supply of U.S. dollars and the value of the U.S. dollar relative to the peso. Okay, so that's easy enough. We go back here and we see that, think about that, if the U.S. is going to start here and then begin to supply or invest less dollars into the world market, in this case Argentina, if the U.S.'s investment of dollars in the world drops, then the supply of U.S. dollars to the world, to the foreign exchange market, drops. So the supply of U.S. dollars to the world shifts to the left, which is going to drive down the quantity of U.S. dollars in the world and drive up the relative value of dollars to pesos. So we think about this right here. Say at this point right here, right, that it would take 10 pesos to buy 1 U.S. dollar. Well, if this is a pesos per dollar, so if it's 10 per 1 here, 10 to 1 here, this could be, say, 12 to 1. So if now it's going to take 12 U.S. pesos, or whatever the exchange rate is. You'd have to look it up, which you did, I'm sure you did this year, for, I think might have been the Mexican peso. But anyway, if it takes more pesos, so this is going up to buy 1 U.S. dollar, then that means that the U.S. dollar is becoming more valuable, or is appreciating relative to the Argentinian peso. Okay? So I believe that takes care of part C. Yeah. The value of the U.S. dollar increases relative to the peso. It's going to appreciate, and you can also say that the peso relative to the dollar, the peso is going to depreciate. Okay, you can say that, or both, or one or the other. Okay, so now, last part, D. Suppose that the inflation rate is 3% in the U.S. and 5% in Argentina. What will happen to the value of the peso relative to the U.S. dollar as a result of the difference in the inflation rates? Well, the value of the peso will go down. Think of the inflation rate as the inverse of buying power. So when the inflation rate is low, the buying power of your money is relatively higher. And then if the inflation rate is higher, then the buying power of money is lower. A simple example, if I had $100 and the inflation rate was 3%, then it would take $103 to buy the same stuff. But if inflation was 5%, it would take, to buy the same amount of goods that I was able to buy for $100, after the 5% inflation, it would take $105. So in this scenario, in the U.S., $100 would have slightly more buying power than $100 would in Argentina. So that would make U.S. goods less expensive and more attractive than Argentinian goods. Okay? And that takes care of question 3, free response 3, which is due. Let me jump back over here, which is due. I was looking at something. Yeah, which is due when? It's due. That's going to go right here and under a class of videos as soon as I download it. Anyway, and it's going to be due, I believe, next Sunday, April 29th. Okay? Free response 3.